Mr. Tlali, we have a comment on Facebook. We have Marakane saying thank you for the presentation. So thank you very much, Marakane, for watching. We also have a comment. It's a question actually from David here on Zoom. David is saying, do some banks finance you in such a way that they will include your transfer costs? Can you also define what transfer duties are? Because apparently if the property is less than $1 million, you do not pay transfer duties, but is that only a portion of your transfer costs?
Okay. Thank you, David, for that question. It's very valid. It is also very relevant for today because at least people will understand going forward. We have also addressed it and spent half a webinar previously. So I will be answering only your question, but for people to dig deeper into it, they can just go back to our archives or to our videos in our YouTube channel. A transfer duty. Okay, let me explain the 3 different fees that you pay or that you could pay when you are the purchaser, or who pays them. Now, there are different parties involved in the transfer process. It can get up to 3 attorneys and 4 different types of payments. Now, I'll make a quick example. Let's say I am now buying a property from you, Mr. David. You had a home loan in that property with Bank X. Now you are selling the property to me, which you can. Then that loan was attached to the house that you had with Bank X through a process called a bond. And that process was done by attorneys because it's a legal process. And you had paid those attorneys when you were buying the property. Now you want to sell the property. Bank X, the reason they attached that home loan to the house, they wanted to make sure that when you do sell your home, you do not sell it in a way that they do not get their money. So they wanted to make sure that when you sell it, they get all their money that you owe them first. As to how much you sell it for and how much you make, you don't make, that's not relevant to them. They just want to get back what they gave you or what you still owe them. Now, when you are then selling to me, the bank appoints bond cancellation attorneys. The bond cancellation attorneys, their purpose is to remove that attachment, just like it was attorneys that did it. Most of the time, the bank appoints the same attorneys who did the attachment to remove it. That's why they are called bond cancellation attorneys. Now, those attorneys are paid by you as the seller because they are removing your bond that you wanted to put against your property. So you pay for that. That's attorney 1, that's cost 1. But that cost is paid by you as the seller. And then attorney 2. Is the attorney that is then going to change the names from Mr. David to Yabela. That attorney then is called a transferring attorney because they are transferring the property ownership from you to me. That is generally the central attorney in the whole transaction. Everybody depends and communicates with this attorney because that is the main role player in the transaction, because they are the ones who are changing ownership. Everything else around changing ownership revolves around them. Now that attorney gets paid. They call those cost transfer fees because they are doing a transfer of the property. The cost for that attorney is carried or paid for by the purchaser because it is the purchaser who is saying, I want my names to be registered in that property. Therefore, you pay for it. The interesting part is these attorneys are not chosen by the bank. The person who has a legal right to choose them is the seller. Now, many debates for years came about to say, how can a seller choose a transferring attorney but is paid for by the purchaser? The conclusion is simple, straightforward, and understandable because the seller is the one who owns the property. So therefore, the seller is the one who should remain in control of their own property, because they need to protect their own property. So they must choose an attorney that they are comfortable with, that they are certain that they will protect their interests in just doing the transfer. And then the third attorney is the attorney that is now doing what your attorney was removing, is the one who's registering a bond for my new home loan that I was approved for so that I can buy your property. This attorney is appointed by the bank, just like the previous one for you, to now register the home loan against the property to create a bond, that attachment, to make sure that when I later on want to sell, I pay them their money in full and the thing goes on. Of course, they are registering my home loan, not yours as the seller. So I'm responsible for that. So that means out of the 3 attorneys, 1 is paid by the seller, 2 are paid for by the purchaser. And then lastly, the transfer duty itself. Transfer duty is a tax that is payable on property. There's different types of taxes that are payable on property. There's rates and taxes by I almost said Mangaung. I forgot we are now have a worldwide audience. So by the local authorities. So there's also other tax, capital gains tax, many other taxes, but the one that is always applicable is the transfer duty. Now, every year you are correct. Every year during a budget speech, the Minister stands of Finance there and speak, and all of us who are in the property thing, the main thing we want to hear is how much is the roof for transfer duty? When do you start paying transfer duty? So for the past 7-8 years, they've been increasing the amount that is transfer duty free, meaning you are not supposed to pay transfer duty. However, that must be still confirmed by SARS. So currently, the amount is standing at 1 million rand on the dot. If the property you are purchasing is 1 million on the dot or below, you are then not liable to pay a transfer duty, because then it is within what has been exempted by SARS already. 1 million and 1 rand, or 1 cent for that matter, you start paying transfer duty on a sliding scale. When we did that webinar, we even showed the table that SARS uses to calculate that scale. Now, the transferring attorney, who is the central person, has to submit that transaction to SARS. For SARS to say, or for SARS rather, to issue a transfer duty certificate. Whether the certificate is exempting you because the property is below 1 million, or then the transfer duty is payable, and then you get the certificate after it's being paid. So that is how these things work. All of them come to play. The transfer duty, the transferring fees for the attorney, the bond registration fees. So as a purchaser, you pay those 3 fees. And those are the 3 fees that I was referring to when I was saying when you buy at the right price, you buy 10% below, to accommodate these fees. So that if you were to sell the property tomorrow, let's say that property is worth 1 million and you only bought for 900 and you want to sell the following day, you can still put it up for 1 million because you had bought for 900 and the cost that you spent on the transfer will be included. You will get them back with your 1 million. And that's the basic logic that we work with it. It is very simple and straightforward how we recommend things to be done. I hope that answers Mr. David. If he's got a follow-up question, please feel free, sir.
Thank you very much for this insightful information. I realize that I actually have lots more questions. I'm definitely going to consult